All right, welcome to this video for IED, and this is for activity 1.2.4, Fundamentals of Dimensioning. We've been working with starting to get familiar with the basics of dimensioning and the guidelines for dimensioning, and our goal is to create the drawing that you see down here in your notebook, and we're going to add proper dimensions to that so they have a good example of that. We'll do that together as a class today. So just refreshing our guidelines for dimensionings. Number one, we want to match dimension precision to the measurement precision. Okay, if you've drawn it down to the quarter inch, we should dimension it down to the quarter inch. We've drawn it to the inch, we should dimension to the inch. Number two says only dimension a view that accurately shows a feature. Okay, if we show our small view here, we have a hole, a circle in our side view. We're going to put that there rather than the front view or the top view where we see that just as hidden lines. Number three says never dimension to hidden lines. Never dimension to hidden lines. Number four, do not underdimension. In other words, we want to make sure every bit of information is on here so that someone goes to create this part, they can easily look at your drawing and recreate the part based on your drawing. Number five, do not over-dimension. As much as we don't want to under, we don't need to duplicate, because when we start duplicating dimensions, that just makes our drawings look messy. Number six says do not cross dimension lines. Number seven, leave a gap between the extension lines and the object lines. And number eight, avoid crossing leader lines. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and get our cover page out of the way. There's the drawing that we are going to be working on today. To do so, I would like you to first get your engineering notebook out, and I would like you to sketch this multi-view in your engineering notebook. Now, you don't need to do the isometric, but I do want you to create the front, the top, and the side view. So to begin with, make some notes in your notebook. I'll give you some dimensions. Then you can go ahead and create this. Then we'll have you pause, and we'll come back and we'll dimension this together. So to start with, we have our overall width of our drawing, the width. Okay, we see that on the front view. Overall width is 3 inches, 3 inches. Our overall height, our height on this, bottom to top, is 1.5 inches. Our overall depth, in other words, from the front edge to the back edge, you can see that on the top view, or the front edge to the back edge. We can see that on the side view. Think of our side view right here. We're seeing this and this. Here's our front edge, there's our back edge. So our depth from here to here is 1 inch. Once we've got our overall height, width, and depth taken care of, we need to get our contour sizes drawn in there. So let's jump back to our width dimension. We knew we were 3 inches overall. The dimension from here to here is 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches from here to here. It's also the same from here to here, consequently. And the other we need to concern ourselves with is the height of this. We said it's 1.5 inches overall, but this little step right here is 1/2 inch from the top corner down. It's 1/2 inch. And then finally, we have to put the circle right here representing the hole that goes all the way through the drawing. That's a 1/4 inch diameter hole. 1/4 inch diameter hole that is placed 1/2 inch from the bottom. 1/2 inch from the bottom is where the center of that is. And then 1/2 inch from the side in is where that hole goes. So at this point, pause the video and go ahead and get that drawn in your notebook, remembering things like construction lines, go straight over, straight over, straight over. That helps you determine where your elements go for the side view. Likewise for the top, construction lines straight up, and straight up. And with that, you should be able to create your multi-view sketch. Pause the video. Go ahead and get your sketch completed. All right, welcome back. You should have completed your sketch in your notebook. Now we're going to go about completing the dimensioning task on this drawing. Whenever I dimension, I always like to create our dimensions for our overall dimensions first. Okay. Couple reminders as we go along. They weren't in the guidelines, but they were in the dimensioning standards video that you watched. We want to put our dimensions in what we call is the adjacent area. Okay, the top is adjacent to the front, the side is adjacent to the front. So we want to put our dimensions in this area, and we can put it up here and up here. We don't want to put them out here. This area is what we're going to call no man's land. So we should not be putting dimensions on the outside. We want to leave space around our drawing for neatness, for clarity. Sometimes additional notes need to be put out there, but our dimensions should occur in this area. All right, we are going to begin with our width dimension. Now, think back to our lines. We have our lines we'll be working with. We're going to use three new lines, and they are extension lines, dimension lines, and leader lines. And as we get started, our extension lines show us where the dimension go, but a very important part of an extension line is they do not touch the drawing. Okay, so we're going to put in our width dimension first on the front view. And our extension line is going to have a little gap right here. So starting about 1/16 of an inch away, we're going to make our extension line coming straight up. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Our extension line straight up. And it should be approximately the same height here. I'm a little higher here, but you get the idea. They should be approximately the same height. Those are extension lines. Gap here, gap there. Once our extension lines are in place, we know where to put our dimension lines. Those go between that. So a dimension line, nice straight line as best you can. You can use a ruler that may make life a little bit easier, or follow the grid lines. Extension lines are in place and dimension lines. Now we're going to put arrowheads. We always put arrowheads on our dimension lines to tell us where we're dimensioning to. The arrowheads should stop precisely at where it intersects with the extension line. We've left a gap here on purpose because what goes in there is our actual dimension. In this case, it was 3 inches. 3 inches. All right, we've got our overall width drawn. All right, let's continue and let's get our height dimension. Now, height could go on our side view. It could go on our front view. And in this particular drawing, we're going to put it on our front view because we're going to have a number of things going on over here with that hole. Okay, so let's go ahead and put extension lines. Again, starting from the corner, straight out, and from the corner, straight out, remembering to leave your gaps. Okay, those are our extension lines. Now, you might wonder, I crossed lines, didn't I, here? But our rule stated we don't cross dimension lines. It didn't say we can't cross extension lines. Okay, so we've got our extension lines for our height. Let's go ahead and put our dimension lines in. So nice straight vertical line, followed by arrowheads to tell us exactly where we're measuring to. We'll put our dimension in. Remember from our discussion earlier, 1 1/2 inches. All right, we've got our width. We've got our height. We have to get depth. Depth can go one of two places. You can show the depth here to here because this is the front edge, this is the back edge. We could also show depth here because here's the front edge, here's the back edge. We're going to cover a secondary topic here, and that has to do with how many views do we need in a drawing. I think you're going to find out in this particular drawing we don't need 3 views. We might be able to get by with 2. So for that reason, I'm going to put my depth dimensions over here in the side view. So we'll start out with extension lines. Again, remember they don't touch our drawing. And we'll put our dimension lines, again, leaving a gap in the middle for our number, putting our arrowheads on, and then we'll put our dimension in there, 1 inch. All right, we've got overall height, width, and depth. Now, the next thing we want to do is put in what are oftentimes called contour dimensions, or sometimes referred to as secondary dimensions, because we know the overall, but we have to consider what's the height of this little step, what's the width of it here. So let's look again. We'll start with our width dimension, our side to side. We have to dimension this little step right here. Okay, so what that's going to consist of is an extension line right off from that point. Now we could put that dimension either here or here. I don't think it really matters. I'm going to put it on the right side. So with that drawn, we'll put in our dimension line, and that dimension is 1 1/2 inch. Okay. Any more contours there? Nope. Looks like we've just got the one contour. All right, let's look at our height. Any height contours going up and down with a contour right here because it goes up this high and it cuts over. So we have to put a height contour right in there. And that begins with an extension line coming off that piece. Now, because we don't have a lot of space here, there's a technique we can use. We can put our dimension lines outside of that, leaving space inside for our dimension line or our dimension. Okay? And we can tell our arrows are pointing to what we're actually dimensioning to, and the dimension goes in between that space. All right, we've got overall width, we've got contour width. I'm sorry, overall, width and contour width. We've got overall height, contour height. The depth, is there anything we need to deal with there? Not really. So what we've done is we have just created all of what we call the size dimensions. We know the sizes of our object. The last things we need to do is we need to dimension this circle. Not only tell us the size of it, but the location of it. And if you remember from one of our previous discussions, and we have circles and arcs, we need to put in center marks and center lines to mark where these are at. So number one, we know where to dimension to. Number two, we know where it's located on the drawing so when we start building. A circle gets a center mark. It looks like a little plus sign right in the middle. And from that, we can now get our center lines. Okay. Now, that being said, we probably need to add center lines to these two as well because they are symmetrical as well. So we can go ahead and draw on our center line, long, short, long, short, long. There's our center line. If we were to extend this over, this would line up perfectly with that. Our top view also has that same hole. We see what looks like a circle here and here, but the hidden lines help us understand that that hole goes all the way through the part. So on the top view also, we should add our center line. Long, short, long, short, long. We've got our center line in place. Now, what's left? We need to tell ourselves how far up this hole is from the bottom and how far in. So we need to put an extension line here and an extension line there because we need to say how far in and how far up does that go. If we're going to use the same technique as we did over here, we'll put our arrowhead on the outside, our dimension line on the outside, leaving us room for the ½ dimension. This one, we can probably put that ½ inch inside just because of the nature of how we draw, how we write in a ½ inch. I'll put my units on that one. All right, all that's missing is the size of the hole. Sizes of holes are typically done with what's called a leader line. A leader line is drawn not straight out or straight up, but typically at somewhere between a 30 and a 45-degree angle from the center point of that, and then we'll put a horizontal line and then put our dimension on this. So we're going to draw ourselves a leader line going out. On the end of a leader line, we want to put an arrowhead that says we're dimensioning to this particular circle. And we'll put another dimension line there, and we'll mark that with a diameter. Symbol for a diameter is a circle with a line through it, and we're 1/4 inch. Okay, 1/4 inch. All right, with that, we have our drawing all dimension. We can double check. Do we have overall width? Yes. Overall height? Yes. Overall depth? Yes. Contour width? Yes. Contour height? Yes. Do we have the location of the hole? Yes, it's a ½ inch up, it's a ½ inch over. Do we know how big the hole is? Yes. Now, to make this come full circle with last week's discussion, notice how we've utilized the space here and here. That's why we leave the gap, so we can annotate our drawings. Notice how one of our dimensions right here, this ½ inch, had to get out into what I called no man's land before. Oftentimes there can be exceptions to the rules, and that is the case here. The exception to the rule is because it would show this much more clear if I put it here. Now, if I took an extension line, went all the way up, we might wonder, is this block divided in two? Okay, this shows it more clearly. So when we make these changes, these abbreviations to the rules or adjustments to the rules, it's just for clarity's sake of the drawing. Now, as we study this drawing, we can ask that question that I led into before. Do we really need the top view? Do we see anything from that top view that we don't get here or here? Not really, do we? Okay, and a good indicator, if we didn't need to put any dimensions up there, we really don't need that view. So we could have omitted that altogether. Now, I'm not going to get real particular and count you off if you do that, because we're still learning if we do or don't need that. But as we get more accustomed with dimensioning, we'll become familiar with that and realize, hey, I can save myself the work. I really don't need that view because it's not really necessary to show any more information. All right, with that, you should have the example drawing for IED 1.2.4, Fundamentals of Dimensioning, completed in your notebook. I would expect you to use this as an example now as we go forward and continue with a few more dimension exercises. Thank you for working with me, and we'll see you on our next video.